All right. Well, before we get too into the weeds, do you want to do an intro real quick?
Sure.
All right.
No.
No.
Sure.
We're just gonna make it real hard for us to have an intro.
Oh my gosh.
Good morning, everyone. It's Memorial Day weekend. Hope everyone's doing well. This is Alex on my left, Tillman on my right, and today we're going to talk about. Oh, yeah, so you're going to gaslight me again?
That fast.
All right, guys.
It was too easy. I haven't told him to shut up in a long time.
I know.
I noticed that.
And I was almost happy about that.
Yeah.
We gotta get that on the push button.
Yeah, we need a red shut up button.
Oh, you can get those too. They do them for cats where they have commands on there.
Really? Cats?
You can train cats and dogs to talk.
Shut up.
Yeah, you can tell them to shut up. They'll know what it means.
Elliot.
Great. I know what you're doing here, but I'm gonna feed right into it. All right. So today we have some topics that are specifically related to the holiday, as well as some videos that we prepped ourselves with this week. So which do you guys want to start off with?
I guess I would prefer to start off just because I would like to rehash some of the conversation that we had last week. To go back to critical race theory. I guess first and foremost, like I said, I was not properly prepared myself for that, and I more so went with the flow on that. And though those things were good, and the conversation turned out well,
I thought so.
I still feel that we needed to go back and define more so for people what critical race theory is, and talk about more so what it is, and possibly debate that more than our opinions on what it does. And I feel like last week we more so talked about what the possibilities of what it could do.
Yes.
If it was there. So anyway, critical race theory is something that has currently been talked about in law schools or discussed in law schools, graduate schools, as looking at law through the lens of race. That, number one, I guess we'll say is a theory. And that's kind of the part that we all jumped over. We jumped over that because everyone else has been jumping over that and talking about how it affects public schools.
Right.
Well, the thing is that critical race theory is not a standard in school. It's not being, quote unquote, taught in schools.
Oh, it is.
No, well, hold on.
Or was.
Hold on.
Well, in some areas it is.
No, and that's the thing is that's where we're slightly off in this, is that we're being told it's taught in schools, but what it is that certain parts of this theory, because like I said, with any theory there's a multitude of parts. Anybody can essentially add to it, take away from it, but I want to get back to the home base of it. What happens is, because if I think something and I say it in a classroom with my students, i.e. people like to bring up the 1619 project.
Correct.
So if I say to my students, well, Africans came here 1619. Now, there are some historical documents that show that, so that could be considered a fact. There are some people who still would deny that. But if I say that in a classroom, because critical race theory touches on 1619, and it's been banned in Cherokee County, as a Cherokee County teacher, I'm not allowed to talk about 1619 project whatsoever now. It could be punishable. As in where this is an ideal I had on my own. So when they're saying it's being taught in these schools, it's not a priority course and it's not a standard. It's only when a teacher feel like it's relevant to speak to some of the things that involve speak to some of the things that revolve around critical race theory. That teacher that they say the teachers they say are teaching it may not even know what critical race theory is, and still can be essentially guilty of teaching it. You see what I'm saying?
I think so, but I think I totally agree with what you're talking about. There are historical facts that need to be discussed in the classroom. I think where maybe there's a little bit of confusion, critical race theory as a educational model has been introduced, meaning that In the video that you supplied, it talked about we're defining people by their color of their skin, not the content of their character, antithetical to everything that Martin Luther said. It actually said that in your video, right?
Yes.
All right. So and that racism exists even unconsciously, you're racist, right? Now, that was the theory, a educational model theory that was presented to be taught. Not saying you can't teach about 1619 and the origin of the immigration of the African population to America and what that looked like, the evolution to the 1700s and slavery and everything that occurred after that. They didn't say you can't teach the historical context, but from the premise that the color of your skin, black, brown, white, minority versus a majority population, is inherently racist. That was the concept that was discarded. Now, the origin of critical race theory came out of critical legal or critical law theory. So you're right. Harvard Law School is where it originated out of. Now, in the 70s, one could probably make a good argument that the legal system may have been not in favor of a minority population. Now, there's another component that slides under both of those, and it's called social education theory, SET, right? So that's another one that's trying to come in, changing the educational model. So I think what you're saying is a good point, that I don't think a teacher should be excluded from teaching children about the historical facts, ever. And the historical facts as they happen, not as an interpretation or an opinion about that. If we say that in 1619 that Africans were immigrated unwillingly to America, okay, we don't need to say that, and that still exists today, that concept is still going on today. That's an opinion or a correlation that is drawn that may or may not be backed up by facts. And going back to what I said last week, what you're doing is you're taking a majority white population and then a minority black population, you're separating those two in an attempt to compensate for past issues, elevating one to what you perceive to be the elevation of the other, thus taking away the equality component, which I think is the foundation of why the school board is against it. I think why most people, there's a reason it's been argued so vehemently since the 70s, and it really hasn't been implemented.
Well, it wasn't. I wouldn't argue that it was vehemently argued since the 70s to this day, but it has come up as a hot thing recently because of the 1619 project, the paper that also Professor Bell did as well, and the book that he wrote that spoke to this. But more and more, when I look at it, it really is discussing white privilege. And it's discussing the ideal of white privilege, the existence of white privilege. And by banning critical race theory, what you're doing is you're saying we're not going to acknowledge that there is any white privilege, nor do we want children to be able to acknowledge that there is any white privilege. At that point, whether it's perceived or not, if you do believe that, then you are keeping the minority below and making sure that future generations continue to do so as well. It is not a correction of racism by any means. It is to ignore racism and ignore the privileges of racism, and to make sure that our future generations continue to live in that way. So that's where I take issue with the banning of it. But also I take issue with the banning of it when I recognize, like I said, that it's not actually, like these are not standards and they're not prioritized. So the ideas that these are being taught because teachers are being told to teach it, that's not what's happening. You see what I'm saying? Like they're speaking as if this is already in the classroom because teachers are being told by their bosses, the Board of Education, go and teach this, but that's not actually the case. So if an individual teacher speaks on some of these items...
No, it is in some parts of the country, it is being taught.
Okay. Well, that's like I said,
whether K through 12 or at a collegiate...
I'm only talking about, I'm saying K through 12 isn't teaching that.
They are.
They're saying they are. but they're not actually teaching it because it's not a standard for what course. Like, you have to look at which course would they have taken out to implement this course.
White privilege.
There's not courses.
That's what they're talking about. Where in colleges now they do have white privilege education.
Yeah, but in college you sign up for the course where it's like if you're in fourth grade, is this taking your math slot?
But therein lies the argument is that they're saying it must be implemented in K through 12 in some places and in some places not.
Yeah, there's people that say it should be implemented. And
it is being implemented.
Well, we have to have the actual places. Like when you say
there's California.
Yeah. So what school do you have? Do you have examples of that? Because we can't talk about in the ether of in the door open. In the ether that there are schools. Well, what schools are? The burden of proof is then on you.
Because from what I was looking at, there are no schools who actually were already implemented. Once I got done looking at that, I aligned it with which this is a situation in some schools, but the transgender ban and saying, well, transgender boys cannot compete with girls. And they were like, okay, well, in Idaho, they banned that.
Yes.
So then the question was posed, well, if you're going to ban that, how many transgender boys do you have trying to play with girls? And the answer was none in the state. Now, there are a couple of schools and other places who do have that, and I personally, in my opinion, think it should be banned. But that's neither here nor there. You had people around the country banning it essentially as, like you say all the time, virtue signaling.
Yeah.
To say, this is where we stand. And in this red state or in this red county, we want to make sure you all know that your girls will not have to ever compete with boys before it's even an issue. And so what I was saying on this note is that people are saying it's an issue before they even go through the steps to actually make it a real issue.
Because the board wouldn't have banned it if it wasn't proposed.
No. Yes, they will.
It was proposed.
It was proposed to ban it in Cherokee County.
No, it was proposed to teach it.
Not in Cherokee County.
Yeah, it was. That's why they voted it down.
The thing that I really wanted to touch on with that, even if it's being, because we're not going to get there on that in this moment.
No.
But the thing I want to touch on is, like I said, what it is. And what it is more so discussing white privilege and the benefits of that. And for me, now that's not an attack on children, as they're putting it. That is making them recognize, that is allowing them to recognize the benefits that they have here in this country that other people may not have here in this country. And it also puts into their mind that we can make that difference. I can make that adjustment. And their willingness to call for that adjustment.
All right, can I kind of shift the topic a little bit?
Yes.
Because I think we're gonna probably not agree that critical race theory, as it's defined by how I saw it, by the video you showed, by what I looked up research-wise, its origins, we are not going to agree that needs to be taught in school. But
no, I don't think that it needs to be taught in school.
But I
can see why certain parts. There are things that I completely disagree with critical race theory, as in with every theory in the world.
Right. Like,
so there's things.
What we're talking about is the middle of here. The 3% that we might disagree with. Now, where's the line in that? Where I'm going to probably move away from what you might think is that I'm okay with helping people understand that each race has unique, I don't want to say challenges, but unique, help me, Elliot, what's a better word? It's not a challenge. Circumstances, conditions, whatever, that we deal with. I mean, one of the best commercials that I remember seeing, and I forget what it was for, it may have been a BLM commercial, I don't know, but it was a young black man who was in regular clothes like I am, talking about, he was a law enforcement officer, he was also gay, and every day he got up and he put on his uniform, but he was black. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that he can't change is the color of his skin. He's always black. And that one actually made me think. I'm like, all right, now that's a real discussion. Now, again, not being racist, okay, not being racist, I have a hard time seeing that as a deficit that he's black. All right, I do have a hard time because I don't have that in me. That's where the critical race theory component bothered me, is that you're racist whether you know it or not. And I don't think that I am. Because then by saying that white privilege, okay, so that means that every day when I get up, no matter what I go to work, if I come here and I am a therapist and I am a counselor and I do work with people with mental health across the board, all nationalities, demographics, conditions, you name it, but by being white, and no matter what office I go into, then I have a privilege or a power differential against clients of minorities. And I'd argue that I've never created that environment. So you're assuming that the color of the skin of the individual creates a privilege for me and a deficit for you.
The thing I think
I
that
disagree
might be
with
helping you on that you missed is that you brought into SET, which is a social construct there.
Right.
Critical race theory points to the idea that all these things were socially constructed. So when you say you haven't created that room, you haven't created this space where people could feel uncomfortable, because it's not about you individually. In the same way I tell you, I always speak to systems. Right. It is about the social construct of things. But the way that people in general, and the issue that I believe that we have as a nation is that we're all special individually.
Right. And
so because we're all special individually, no, that's what I'm saying. The problem we have is that we're all special individually. Because we're all special individually, none of us will ever cop to what takes place in the majority. We're not recognizing that you can generalize things. And because we're not recognizing that the majority of people can construct this viewpoint, we can't accept it.
Well, but the barrier, the breakthrough, I don't know if I agree with that totally, but the barrier to that is exactly what we're trying to get out to people, is that if we sit down and have this kind of conversation, I honestly believe that you don't feel like because you're black, I think any differently of you than I do anyone else. And I really believe from you, because I'm white, you don't think, now that you know me, you don't think anything differently of me. You may have assumed some things. I can honestly tell you that I didn't assume anything of you until what you presented to me in your life is what brought us together. That's what I went with. I can honestly say that my lens is that way, and I believe your lens is that way. And if we cannot encourage more people to do what we're doing and have conversations, I will never fully understand what it means to be a black man. You may not ever fully understand what it means to be a white man.
Of course.
But that doesn't mean that one is privileged over the other unless we accept that that's true. And that's where I go back to the Constitution. I go back to what we originally set out to do as the American experiment, was that all men are created equal. Now, I know the origin, we talked about last week, the origin of that document may be different, but I can tell you my life story, and I've told you part of it. There certainly wasn't a lot. There was privilege. There was. My family had some means, okay? I managed to screw that up every way possible until I got my head screwed on straight in my life. But that doesn't, I'm going to have a hard time getting there, but that's my viewpoint. And I don't really believe that you feel that way about me. And I know I don't feel that way about you. And you're saying in the generalized way, right? Yes. Everybody?
That we don't realize that everybody else.
Then we need more people to watch this so that they sit down and they do this with their neighbor too. Like you said, what was the advice from
going to
a black church and go to a white church?
Yes.
Amen. I want to do that, because then we dispel a lot of these myths. And in all of it. Because again, the color of your skin does not define the content of your character. That's Martin Luther. And I think if Martin Luther King Jr. was in here with us now, he would encourage what we were doing. This might have been the vision that he had, is that people talk. Get to know your brother. Yeah. And by brother, I mean a human, not a black person or a white person, right? Yeah. I mean brother in the colloquial way.
And we have to move on to the next thing. And this, if you decide you want to cut this, you can cut this, but I have to rebut you real quick. You said that we didn't. Well, you can.
No, you
Well,
can't.
Oh,
Now that you said that,
you
you
can.
can't.
You can. Well, I'm being dead serious, but I have to rebut you, like, because this is between me and you. That's why I said if you want to cut it, you can cut it. But this
I want
this was us individually and how we met.
Right.
Your words, even actually on this podcast, you said that you, in this moment, you said that you didn't see me any differently. But your words, even on this podcast, you said this big black man walked into my office. What's about to happen?
Right.
That can be
Well, I don't know what's about that.
That's what you said.
Well, here's a big black man. What's he got to say?
But
That doesn't mean
what
judgment.
you said is what's about to happen.
Well, when I
And
mean
it is
that,
judgment.
well, no, I mean that in the context of, I say that with all my clients. What's about to happen when they walk in the door?
The reason I'm saying this, and I'm not going to argue with you, because everyone has moments of realizing certain things. But that is what that is. That
What
is
is it?
judgment. It is saying, because I am big and because I am black, you have to be aware of what's going to happen. Whether it's how I'm going to converse with you, what story I may have to tell, or if I may want to put my hands on you or harm you in some way,
Oh, I didn't think
whatever.
that.
I'm not assuming that you did. What I'm assuming is that you felt like you needed to be aware of me because of my size and my skin tone versus any other person that would have walked in that office. And you have you have to be
now not to
aware of that.
crucify, because you also have to realize that people say certain things and mean them a certain way. So like you could say it's kind of like the same thing where you understood where the tweet that said "you're next," you interpreted that as "you're going to go to jail next," and Alex interpreted it as a threat. I think that you're now on the opposite sides of that, where Alex obviously didn't mean that as a threat, but to you it does sound like
Not a threat.
No,
judgment.
not a threat. And also, I do see this now. I do see it as innocent.
Yeah.
I definitely saw that as innocent. I didn't think that you were being racist towards me when you said that. I mean, because you said it a couple of times. I never was offended by it or anything. But it is a judgment. Now, whether you want to call it a stereotype or bias or whatever you want to call it, it is a judgment. And that is a point where, because we're, like I said, we're special and we're individual, you may realize that for you, that's nothing. But for a lot of other people, it's something. And I said, I have to realize, for me, I'm not offended. I don't feel a way about it. I didn't even think about it. Negative thing until this conversation.
Right.
And I don't feel negative in this conversation.
No.
But when I'm listening to you say, well, there was no judgment, it's like, that's what that is. And so because I recognize what it is, I'm saying that because I can be somebody who doesn't be offended or be bothered by it. But I'm sure there's a lot of other black people that would have been like, what do you mean because I'm big and I'm black?
And you deserve clarification for that. When any new client walks into my room, there are immediate assessments that I make.
That's your job.
Culturally, contextually, behaviorally, your mannerisms, everything. And let's face it, brother, you're a big man. One, you are black.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can't help that, right? So the first thought I went through my mind was, oh, okay, he's a big black man, but your demeanor and your personality right out the gate was humble, and you were engaging. I could tell that you were checking, all right, who's this cat? I got that part, and that is maybe a flaw in who I am, is that I am very transparent about what's going through my head. So I want that even playing field with you, with anybody that I'm dealing with in terms of clients in regular life, to a fault sometimes. I will say, that was the first thought I had, is like, here's a big black man, what's coming? I don't know, because it could be any kind of thing. Now, you don't know that I also say this, there's a very large redneck dude who came in my office who ended up being a problem, who had to be told to leave, and nearly had to think about protection because this guy was getting out of hand. The first thought when he walked in the door was like, oh shit, that's a big redneck dude. What's he got to say? And I knew why he was coming. For other issues that I can't really say, I was really on guard, more so with him than with you. And now, did I draw assumptions because of his size and what I knew about him? Yes. Did I draw assumptions about you because of your size and your skin color? I can say honestly, I did not. But I was curious what's coming, because and that's true Elliot's a skinny little white dude, and the first time he came in my office, I'm like, what's coming from him?
Well, now they know. Now everyone has to know that.
Okay. Elliot is a buff, bodybuilding young man with
you can tell by the tone of my voice.
scrapping muscular arms.
Greek god over there.
Yeah, a little an Adonis thing happening back there.
When I talk to Alex, I cradle him in my arms.
Right. Only on Fridays.
Only on Fridays.
Okay, I mean, we don't talk about that, man.
Those are expensive.
And I've moved my key now, so you can't come over anymore.
Oh, well, I'll just wait outside.
But to close, I respect you for pointing that out. And I know that there are areas where my transparency, my openness, because it does come from a place of innocence, that I think you picked up on, I don't realize that could be interpreted as a racial profiling statement. I had no intentions for it to be that
No,
way.
and I know that.
But that's fair.
Yeah,
I
do know that.
I need to be better about how I express that. But here's how my mind interprets that. The reality is that you're a very large black man. So I felt like by stating that, I'm stating a fact.
You are.
Right.
And that's why I said.
But I didn't say gangster thug, N-word.
But for you, you may not do that. And that's why I said I wanted to point out so that way our viewers know that for you, yes, it may be just big black guy. But for other people, being big means physical threat.
Right.
Being black for other people can mean physical threat. Or it could mean gangster or thug or that N-word. It could have negative connotations for certain people, especially if they don't know many of me.
And you know what I would say to those people is that they are uneducated, uninformed idiots. That they need to take the time to sit down with a large black man and have a conversation.
I would, and I agree. I agree with you up to the idiot point. You could be uninformed, you could be uneducated. Sometimes,
okay, they can be smart and still be behaving stupidly.
I've traveled the country. Like I said, there's places in the country where there's literally no black people.
I know.
None.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to even go to a black church for some people is not there.
I see. Okay.
To get to know it, there's some people who may watch this and I'll be the only black face that they actually could feel connected with just because they hear me talking every week.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And I'm aware of that just because of my travels. So hopefully I represent my community well enough that they see that not every black person is the way that you see on the news, where I would argue a large percentage of white people, the only place they really do see us is the news and the internet.
Or a mugshot.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying? That's so.
I feel
that's my point.
No, I'm down with that. And if I need to change language and be conscious of that,
it wasn't about getting you to change. It was just an acknowledgement of the judgment.
Well, no,
because it's not that I feel that the judgment was negative. It's just acknowledgement of it. That is what that is. Even though it feels negative, that don't mean that it has to be that. And even though I may have, because of the conversation we had, and I told you it's a judgment, and so it came from me feeling like it's negative. I don't think it's negative. I just think that we have to be aware of our judgments and what is tied to them.
So to bring that back around to what you're talking about to close it out, in the core and essence of what critical race theory is, whether or not there's an actual education model for it, you're saying that we probably should do a better job from young to old to educate that there are differences based on color, opportunity, privilege, whatever you want to call it, but but not do it in a biased way. Meaning, I'm hoping that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
not in a biased way.
I agree with your assessment.
Right. So I agree with that.
Yes.
We can get there. I don't think we need to be teaching critical race theory. Now, if you wanted to talk about race awareness and situation and things like that, removing the point, because I don't know if I can get there with white privilege either, because to me, white privilege immediately assumes black disprivilege. And I know you would maybe argue with me on that, so we need to frame that in a way that doesn't already contextually de-elevate black and elevate white. Educate about both equally. And maybe that would help because it helps us, and I think it would help others. But I'm not going to get there with critical race theory. But I love the way you painted that. I'm down. But
Of course.
trying to learn that, and I think if anybody takes away anything from that, is that you got to sit down and talk.
Oh,
And I certainly did not mean anything about Tillman when I said he's a big black man. Look at him. He's big. And he's black. And I'm a little old white guy, so we're good.
You're not that old yet.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All
If I
right.
had hair.
So, hey everybody, welcome back to Where's the Line? Alex is on my left, Tillman's on the right, and we've got a small story. So this is back from 2018, and this was on a military Air Force base. And keeping in our theme, it's Memorial Day weekend. I want to talk about this event that happened. So, one morning, several black cadets had slurs written on their doors, right? And then a whole investigation was launched. It was a big deal. They were trying to find out who did it. It seemed like one person did it. The supervisor of these cadets called everyone to the mess hall and gave a very powerful speech about how racism is not tolerated. Only to have a couple days later find out that it was one of the black cadets that was the person who did that, and it seemed to be to avoid punishment for some misdemeanors and some mistakes that he had made. And obviously he was removed, but the whole situation was just kind of it didn't really take away from the fact that the military came back and had such a strong opinion about that. But how do you guys feel about that event how that played out?
people lie.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what much more to say about that. The only thing about it is when you lie in that fashion, it hurts the cause. It hurts the purpose.
Both sides.
Both sides or either side, because there's people, of course, who lie the other way as well. You know what I mean? But it hurts the relations between people, between both sides of an argument for racial equality and things of that sort. And so that's really what I take from that. I guess I don't have a lot of opinion on it, because to me, I don't like giving it shine. You know, once you recognize something like that, those things tend to catch on in the media and get a lot of shine. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it promotes the negative outlooks. See, black people are just lying. Nothing's happening to them. There is no white privilege. Things like that sort. And I just don't like to give those. I don't want to give a table legs. So.
What it makes me think of is Jeffrey Smollett. Mm-hmm. And now, if you're gonna create, the only thing I'm gonna say about all that is that if you're gonna fake a hate crime, don't write a check to the guys that did it so they can verify that thing. I do think that people take advantage, and both of these cases are situations where a black individual faked racism. Mm-hmm. Now, there are just as many cases where white people do it too, so I'm not making that a black thing, but I think this is where, as a society, right, the media latches on. Smollett was the thing. Mm-hmm. All bad, Trump horrible, blah blah blah, till oh shit, he did it. Now nobody. This is the influence of the media we talked about last week. Their opinion. Then it went away.
Ooh, I can completely disagree with you on that one. That's the thing that I love about algorithms and how they work.
It went away.
From the viewpoint that you had, it was super big. Everybody knew about it, and it was the only conversation. And as soon as that happened, it went away. What happened was actually on your side of the algorithms, it was big. This happened. It went away. All it did was slide over to my side of the algorithms. It was huge over here.
After it was exposed.
After it was exposed, there was non-stop memes, jokes, attacks. He eventually was getting charged. The chief of police in Chicago hit him with like 16 charges for that. Whether or not he was going to be able to return to his show was a big thing. Dave Chappelle made a comedy special where the biggest joke of the comedy special was him talking about
Smollett.
Jussie Smollett.
Jesse, yeah.
You had said Jeffrey. I was laughing because in that moment, I couldn't remember his real name because Dave Chappelle was calling him Juicy Smouye. So because of that, I couldn't even think of.
Let's call him that. Real name. Yeah, I'm down with that.
And but so like it was a huge thing, and this was the Dave Chappelle special happened like a year later, and people were still making fun of him. So that's what I love about
it. It lingered, but it didn't
went away.
It lingered, but it did not get the attention with the anti-Trump sentiment that was going on in the media at the time. And they said 2 guys with MAGA hats did that. They went. It's similar to the young man at the Capitol and the Native American man banging the drum because he had to had a red "Make America Great" hat on again. And he stood there and smiled. They crucified that kid. And they ended up having to pay him $250 million too. So, sensationalism of perceived or faked racial things is there. And from the military perspective, I think when something like that, and what I thought of when you brought that up is that if that happened where racial slurs were put on, black military cadets. I don't think that's the right term, but
no, they were cadets because they were in training.
Okay, cadets. And it was done by a black man. What it does is distract from the potential that there may be a measure of residual racism within the military, which is something I'm sure you would have an opinion on. So what it actually does is hurt the cause, because now what you've done is if there are racists out there, and there are, okay, you can't, you cried wolf. And so now nobody listens. Smollett did it. Now nobody listens. Not that nobody listens, but it hurts. It hurts if you're trying to have an honest discussion about the challenges of race. Crap like that hurts, is what I would say. My opinion of that is, and we could have.
Well, it definitely hurts because within the military, period. And this is I guess another note from one of my mentors, is that he had said to me, like I said, when I spoke to him last week, he was saying that there were people that he had to be in the trenches with the man right next to him that he knew hated black people. There wasn't a question.
Right.
He was like, but you're not going to change them after you've been in embarrassed with them and have to sleep next to them and talk to them every single day. You're not changing their mind about you, and you have to live with that.
Yeah, but
what was
the bind that held them together?
Exactly, but that's what I say. But also, regardless of that, we got to live,
and we got
to survive. So we have to. I may not like you, but I definitely have to trust you. I don't have a choice.
You got my back. Well, if we're going to work
on it,
which goes into my argument that therein lies the testimony that America is the greatest country in the world, because two people diametrically opposed religiously, culturally, skin color, whatever, can come together, and the cause is we got to defeat the enemy because their goal is to kill us. And you and I might not agree, but we're going to go back take out that guy.
Yes.
And at the end we can part ways, throw punches, do whatever, but we did our job, and we did that because we're Americans, because we have shared values, even if we have differences, and that's present in religion, cultures, college football. Some of the biggest arguments I've ever seen. Put a Georgia fan and a Florida fan next to each other and see what happens on a Saturday morning. I mean, but in the end, they love college football. They just fight. They argue for a different team.
And as true as it is that it's great that we can overcome that thing. Mm-hmm. It still would be a whole lot better if we didn't have to.
Is that a realistic expectation for humans? We talked about total depravity last week and the sinful nature of man. Is it ever going to really be possible that people do not have inherent bias? Because remember, bias and racism, preference versus racism. Mm-hmm. Is it a realistic expectation that people are not going to have bias? I don't think that's
the thing is that I put to you then when we had that conversation. Remember that we're beyond the point of bias when you do not like me. Like you're going to have nothing to do with me because of something I can't control.
The color of your skin,
yes.
Right?
then that's beyond the point of bias.
No, I
If
agree.
you're biased towards something, when you're biased against it, that's a problem.
No.
But anyway,
Exclusion is what we're talking
yes,
about.
and to make it quick, yes, I feel like we could possibly get there one day if everybody was working towards that.
If everybody was doing this.
Yeah.
If everybody was doing this.
Alex, you are up now. What's your topic?
Am I up?
Yeah, you're up.
Okay.
Well, you're sitting down, but
I was going to say. Well, it is Memorial Day weekend.
it's stuck.
Okay. I don't know where we are. It is Memorial Day weekend. Memorial Day, we celebrate fallen soldiers, people that have sacrificed their lives for our country. People may or may not know that I am a very patriotic individual, evidenced throughout my life and my shirt today, but I have flags that I collect, historical flags. I have lots of memorabilia from my grandfather who fought in World War II in Korea. I believe in the American system, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence hang out in the hallway there. To me, it's a big deal. There are things that I think about on this weekend. I think about family that have served and that have passed on. I think about the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the soldiers that man that and the lifetime commitment they make to do that. An interesting fact people may not know is that the soldiers that volunteer for that they make a vow that they will never drink, never, that they will hold that position. Rain, sleet, snow, freeze and rain, whatever, there is a soldier guarding the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and it's a tribute to all of the fallen, whether known or unknown, and then Arlington Cemetery and the things that go along with that. And the ceremonial part of it is meaningful, but the memorial component of taking a moment to think of the sacrifices that have occurred all the way back to the Revolution and so forth, and what we had to do to become independent. And in the War of 1812, where we had to fight the British again, then our own internal struggles with the Civil War in the North and the South, and then the Spanish-American War that occurred as we moved to the West, and then World War I, and then World War II, and then other terroristic threats, the Korean Battle, the Vietnam War, or conflicts. All of these components that we as a country send our young men and women to go and defend what we believe to be right. Not only the American way, but we support our allies and we do that and they sacrifice. Now, to bring a little politics into it, our current Vice President Kamala Harris sent out a little tweet with her picture smiling saying, "I hope everyone enjoys the long weekend." Not any tribute, not any mention whatsoever of the fact that it's Memorial Day, the sacrifice of the soldiers, or anything. She has since corrected that today. But that's Friday. Y'all enjoy the long weekend. Happy day, smiling, which she has a tendency to do, to giggle at inappropriate times and not address issues and so forth. I gotta say that, and this is not a racial thing, this is a political thing. That kind of bugs me to the core, is that, we talked about our faith in politicians last week. To me, that is such a insulting dismissal of what this weekend is about. It's not about a 3-day weekend, and the banks are closed on Monday and everybody gets the day off because it's a federal holiday. It is about a memorial. And now, not everyone has to be reverent and, put American flag on their front lawn or talk about family members that they've lost in service. And, we don't have to be, overwhelmed with a sense of grief or loss because of those sacrifices, but there should be a reverent celebration of the sacrifices that are made that bring together the country that we live in now, that give us the opportunity to have this discussion, to hopefully see the breakthroughs that we need to in our own country. And damn it, let's respect the soldiers that are out there too. And that just hit me bad wrong. Would it have hit me bad wrong if Donald Trump had said the same thing? Yeah. So it's not about who she is or what party she's from. It's the fact that go have a good weekend, y'all. And that just when did we lose focus on what our country's about? Yes, I know we're in an interesting social time and that there's a lot of things developing and conversations that come out of that. The reality is that we fought for this country. We fought to be independent. We declared it and we made it real, and we have fought to defend it and fought to defend it. That is something that we should celebrate. On weekends like this, I think we should come together, and the facilitation of that from the second highest office in the land should be, you know what, we're going to honor and remember our soldiers. Have a good time with your family. Rejoice and celebrate. But to just say, have a good weekend, y'all, hee hee hee, that just, I mean, I don't even know how to interpret that. And I thought about it from a racial component because I knew we'd be talking.
I didn't know it would be a racial component to it. But...
Well, no, like service in the military, the memorial component, celebrating the lives of it. I didn't know because we have mentioned, you know, the differences, maybe military. You just brought up, you know, maybe the potential of racism within the military. Is there a different? And you can help educate me in black culture.
Respect soldiers.
You do.
Yes.
Okay, and I think
military man. I have friends. I have relatives. I have people who are in the military. When you're poor, you definitely have a lot of close friends that do military.
It's a good career.
That's one of the best options for you if you right out of high school and you may not be the.
I don't know that you have to be poor for it to be a good option. I think
no. It could when you don't have to be poor, but if you're not poor, then you tend to have more options because you can pay for college and stuff like that. So. You know, military tends to be the best option when you don't have the economic means. But to your point, yes, she is the second highest in office. It was extremely unprofessional of her, at bare minimum. At bare minimum, you know, she should have. She should know better. I would also ask you, what did Trump tweet on any of the Memorial Days? Did you know?
I didn't look.
And the thing is that the reason I say that is whether he
does he have a Twitter account anymore?
No. I'm talking about the last. No, I'm talking about the last four.
Oh man, everything was patriotic. We love our soldiers.
Okay.
Everything was all in.
So you saw. Okay. So you saw.
Yeah. In the past years. Okay. Yeah.
What I would ask is, did you get that from the news? Because I'm sure you don't follow Kamala Harris, right?
I don't have a Twitter account.
Okay. So, I've never
That's
tweeted.
A very interesting point, Tillman.
Yeah. It was that, but even though she was unprofessional and she was wrong, that was the news sensationalizing that and making sure that people knew. It was the news dividing in that moment. I don't think she didn't say that because I don't care about soldiers. I don't care about America. Any of those things. I think she didn't say it because maybe for her or the majority of people she know, it's just a long weekend. And for me, I can only speak for myself. Most people I know, they speak about it like it's a long weekend. Like we get one day off.
Drink beer, have hot dogs, go to the lake.
Where it was at a point where I asked, wait a minute, what? Like I remember when I asked, I was probably like 17 by then. Like, what is Memorial Day?
Right.
I don't know if we don't go to school on Monday. If you live in America and you grew up here, you know you don't go to school Monday. How much are the teachers teaching on Friday? Hey, y'all not coming to school Monday because
it's summer.
This, that, and the third.
School's out.
Oh, school's out. Well, so then you definitely not it's not something that you normally know that. You know, this is the day that our family may have an extra day together, or we may go out on the weekend. We're going to go out on the lake, and stuff like that.
I see your jab.
Look, white people go on the lake.
Well, yeah, the ones who, I mean, if they got the boat for it.
Hey, I don't get Memorial Day off. I still have to go to
work. Me too. But
shut up, Ellie.
But like I said, I just believe that was a situation, of course, where the news wanted to make sure it was known.
Oh, I agree.
It helps divide.
Is
she wrong? Yes, she's dead wrong. Even if majority of Americans see it that way.
Right.
Which I don't think is majority. You know what I mean? But I do think a great bit of Americans do see it as a day, just an extra day off of work or extra day to relax or whatever. But
which
is
unfortunate.
When you hold that office, you should know better, and you should make it your point to make sure that the rest of America knows better, because it is a day to memorialize our soldiers, to remember our soldiers, to remember those who fought to allow us to be able to have the freedom that we have in this country. Whether you, and that's something that bothers me to get into real quick, is that whether or not you agree with the wars, they're being fought. They have been fought and they will be fought. So whether or not you agree with them isn't the point. What you should do is still recognize your neighbor, your brother, your friend, your church member, whoever it was that stood up and decided that they would fight to make sure you didn't have to.
That's right.
So it doesn't there's Jeff. I disagree with a lot of wars. A lot of them, when I look back at them, we didn't have to do it in that fashion. But that's my opinion. I wasn't there. I don't really know. But I do know that I have lost people and other people have lost people. And I got friends with scars and marks and just mental trauma.
Oh, yeah.
Who still aren't being compensated today.
Right.
If you want to disagree with something with the government on it, you can disagree with the war, and you can disagree with the way that some of the veterans are treated today. But you can't disagree with the veterans.
They went. They did.
They did the best they could with what they had and what they knew. So, yeah, she's dead wrong because it's wrong in that position, period, to not acknowledge.
And I guess maybe, I love how you help me kind of clarify some thoughts, because you're right. I mean, one politician saying a dumbass thing shouldn't shock me.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the Colin Kaepernick thing with the kneeling at the national anthem. It's just one of those areas for me that's a hot button, and it makes me mad. But I think what I like more, what you just said, that you bring up, that is an interesting thing for me, is that you're right. Probably more people than not don't know what Memorial Day is. More people than not don't understand what the 4th of July is about. More people than not don't know what Labor Day is about, right? More people than not can't tell you the first sentence. I'd argue 95% of the people can't tell you what the beginning of the Declaration of Independence says.
Yeah.
And versus, well, people will say, "We the people," right?
Yeah.
But that is not
7 years ago.
Well, that's Lincoln. That's Lincoln in the Gettysburg Address. We the people is not the Declaration of Independence. We the people is the U.S. Constitution.
Yes.
To educate y'all, the first few words when you want to look it up are, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to break the political bonds that tie them to another. That is the essence and beginning of the Declaration of Independence. And we don't teach, educate, emphasize these things anymore, and it's part of what creates the divide too, because now it does become about the social component and our feelings and our emotions today, not realizing all of the sacrifices that went on to get us to where we are, that we have this model where we can have this open discord, because now I can just dismiss everything America because I don't like it, because I feel like you're wrong. So fuck America, edit that.
All right.
America, and I want it to look like this. Well, never mind everything that we went through to get there, because you don't know about it, you weren't educated about it, but I don't like the way it makes me feel when somebody walks around with an American flag on their shirt. I got a statement for that. I'm gonna tell him you just might as well
go ahead, because
might as well get over that, because I'm doing everything I can to keep myself under control on that. But I do think it's a lack of education, because whether or not you like, if your feelings are hurt socially or whatever's driving this new kind of cultural environment where we have such conflict and everything, and it goes to some real issues, George Floyd, law enforcement, all the stuff we cover, all that stuff's real and it needs to be dealt with. But when you dismiss the foundation of what our country was built on, and the reason that we have a YouTube or we have a iPhone and a place where we can talk and have a conversation, what it took to get to there, then to me that just makes absolutely no sense. You can embrace America and its flaws, and you can work together with historically what it took to get us here and make it better. We don't just say America sucks, and that is that comes from a lack of education and understanding. What is the 4th of July? What is Memorial Day? Why do we celebrate these things? Go back and educate yourself. I mean, I called myself out last week. I don't know who my local political representatives are. I need to do a better job of that. But I can get into American history and talk to you about it. I can tell you why we are the way we are. I can show you in the articles and the amendments to the Constitution how we've arrived where we are. Learn that first, then have an argument and a discussion. So yes, Ms. Harris, Vice President Harris, was dismissive. And maybe it shouldn't bother me the way that it does. It's the same way Kaepernick taking a knee during the national anthem bothers me in the way that it does, taking all the social context out of it. But learning what Memorial Day is about and having a level of reverence. Now, go make your hot dogs, have a cold beer, go to the lake, do whatever else. But take a moment and say, damn, people died so that I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. If anybody has any comments or questions, leave them in the comment section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And enjoy the long weekend. And remember what it's all about. Happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day.